I want to start this off by saying that yesterday I stated that I got Tampa and Toronto the day before, like jerseys for the day before the previews. I'm like, I'm not getting Canucks. Maybe an hour after I was done recording videos, I got this. And I got it because look how beat up that is. The logo's all. I mean, Yvonne did her best. She actually took the whole logo off and put it back on, and it's all. So this is the new one. I got this one off eBay. $40. $40. So it's in very good shape, and it's got that on the sleeve. I never had the ones with that on the sleeve, so there we go. So the reason I point this out is because I did get a Canucks jersey the day before doing this. I didn't get a Vegas one because there's only 2 Vegas jerseys, and I have them both. But how beat up are the Canucks? That's the question. And if you go by the polls, and if you go by just looking at this team and where they're at, it's not great. The last 5 seasons for Vancouver have been a misadventure. 73 points this past season, 69 the year before, 75 the year before, 101 in 2014-15, and 83 in 2013-14. So they've missed the playoffs the last 3 years, 4 of the last 5. They've made playoffs 27 out of 47 years, which is not good. And this is kind of Vancouver's MO, that they're just not very good as an organization. They have these brief periods of being a very good team, whether it was the early 2000s with Naslund or early 2010s with the Sedins, or you look at the early 90s with Linden and McLean and everybody. But in between, there is a dark chasm that takes place. Even in between when they were division winners back in the 70s, and then in the 90s when they became competitive again, there's this huge 15 years of just awfulness that was briefly interrupted by the 1982 run to the Stanley Cup final. This is not a team with a proud, consistent history. This is year 2 for Coach Travis Green, and I feel bad for the guy. I genuinely do. Jim Benning is GM, and I know there's a lot of opinions about Benning. When I started this channel 2 years ago, I talked a lot about Benning and how much I couldn't stand the guy. And at this stage of the game, I'm really kind of on the fence. And I'm willing to say, you know what? He inherited kind of a mess with contracts and a team that was on its way down. And absolutely, he deserves some credit for some of the moves he's made. And he does deserve blame for bad ones. Now, top 5 cap hits, this is his problem. Number 1's Louis Eriksson. Louis Eriksson looked disinterested. Louis Eriksson looked like, I don't know, he just, to me, it doesn't feel like he's really been fully vested in being a Canuck the whole time he's been here. But, you know, I don't know if that's just injury, if he's slowing down or what it is, but he hasn't been himself. Watched him in Boston and Dallas. Loved his work in Boston and Dallas, mostly. And I mean mostly because there would be nights he'd be like, you know, if Louis could get going. But really, he was a pretty solid player. Horvat, of course, is number 2 on the cap hit list. Edler's number 3. He's a UFA this coming summer. I don't think they bring him back. Although I didn't think they were bringing Goodbranson back either. And Tanev and Sutter. And everybody and their dog, if you're a Canuck fan, has been trying to trade Tanev and figure out what we can do to trade Tanev. I haven't been. Because I don't think Tanev has a huge trade value. Plus player for me, Brock Besser. Besser's going to negotiate a new contract, and I'm already saying he'll probably be number 1 on this list next summer for the cap. I don't see how they end up talking him into signing for the same amount of money as Horvat. I think Brock's going to end up being a very well-paid star player. I think he's going to do the same thing for Vancouver that Pasternak does for Boston, that he'll be a really solid goal scorer. He's not going to be that emotional leader in the locker room. Doesn't really have to be. Because I think that's going to end up being Horvat or somebody who's not here yet. Minus player, Louis Eriksson I have as the minus player. I know that may seem harsh. I could have gone with Gagne. Gagne didn't really get completely on track as a Canuck either. There are a number of candidates for your minus player. You can look in net and say Nilsson at points last season looked lost. But there we go. MVP for me, Bo Horvat. He's the glue that holds the team together, and I do think he'll end up being named captain. So top 6 forwards, this is where everything's all in flux. Eriksson, and I put ice time up for this one because I know there's going to be people like, Eriksson wasn't there. Yeah, Eriksson had more ice time on the left wing than Berchi. Eriksson played 16.3 minutes a game. Berchi played 15.6. I have no doubt in my mind Berchi, though, ends up being the number 1 guy, playing with Horvat and Besser. And then from there, it's anybody's guess because we have Elias Pettersson coming in and playing second-line center. What if it doesn't happen right off the bat? What if he needs a little bit of time to get himself accustomed to the NHL? Well, then you've got this mess. Gagne could step in. Granlund could step in. Beagle could be the number 2 center. Granlund and Gagne could be on the wing on this number 2 line. Virtanen could step in. They could give Virtanen top 6 minutes out of the gate. Does Goldobin end up jumping into... Like, there's a lot of guys, and there's not a lot in this group that makes you say, yes, this team can defy expectation and make the playoffs. Then there's the blue line. Edler, Stetcher, Del Zotto, and Tanev. Throughout the season, my opinion on Stetcher kind of changed. I had thought that Stetcher was going to... I don't know. He never really wowed me the way that he did the year before in what I'd seen of him. Maybe he can do that this season, but this is going to be tough. And I understand I don't have good Branson in the top 4 because ideally I think Tanev gets that spot. But this is not a playoff team's blue line. And here's the reason I say this. If Edler went to Nashville, what would his spot be? 4th? 5th? Stetcher in Nashville. And then if people say, well, with Nashville, that's not fair. Okay, so yesterday we did Toronto. Where would Edler fit in with the Leafs? Would you put him ahead of Gardner? I honestly probably wouldn't at this stage of the game. I might play him with... No, I don't think I'd play him with Gardner either. And I wouldn't put him ahead of Morgan Riley. And that's the thing. Is that you've got Edler, who is not a number 1 defenseman, who is forced into that role. He had a good season last year, but even with a good season behind him, and even as a rental, I don't know that the price is going to be very high. Now, what's going to fix this is when Quinn Hughes shows up. And of course, to the naysayers, it's going to be, well, that's going to be if Quinn Hughes signs with the Canucks, because, he's NCAA, and he may just say forget it and go UFA in a couple of years, and he could, but we're not worried about that right now. Hughes absolutely could be that number 1 defenseman, but not this year. And all we're talking about today is this coming season. Goaltending, Markstrom and Nilsson, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think either of them are an NHL level starter. I think Markstrom can be a very solid backup. I think if the Canucks traded Markstrom for Saros, I think that would be an upgrade for the Canucks in net. And I know Nashville fans will be like, why are you taking all our players? Why do you keep talking about us? Because there's a level that Nashville's got that Vancouver ultimately would want to get to. They can't right now. But you have to look and say, okay, so which parts do they have to get back to the top? And this is where I personally look at Vancouver and I'm concerned. Because, yeah, there are certain players that look like, Horvat looks like he could be a 30-goal scorer, 65-point guy. Sure, yeah, maybe 70. Besser, 30, 35, maybe 40 goals. Sure, yes, absolutely. Outside of that, Pettersson should be a star. And that's about as far as it goes. And there's other guys in the minors. There's other players that could come up. People are going to mention Jonathan Dahlen, and that's fine. But, again, I have concerns. Additions, Roussel, Beagle, and Schaller. Now, Roussel and Beagle being added definitely caused a lot of people to lose their minds. I still think it was fine because the Canucks are nowhere near the cap. And Beagle and Roussel give them the grit in the bottom 6 they haven't had in a while. I love Brendan Gaunce a ton, but I think Beagle gives them something in the bottom 6 that Gaunce just doesn't. Maybe Gaunce can be played with Beagle at some point, and maybe that'll help him, but something needed to change in the bottom 6. So none of these guys are breaking the bank because the Canucks don't have a cap problem. The Canucks have a talent problem. The Canucks have without the Sedins now. There is a leadership problem. We can all agree on it now. And there were non-Canuck fans and some Canuck fans that felt that the Sedins weren't leaders. Okay, so now the Canucks can go forward with new leadership. As stated, they only made the playoffs in 2015 and lost in the first round to the Calgary Flames. Potential rookies, Adam Gaudette. Gaudette could fix this. Adam Gaudette, if he comes in and plays as well as a lot of people think he can be that number 2 center coming out of training camp and sort of clean this up. Now, how much offensive upside he has at the NHL level, I don't think there's an entire consensus on that. Pettersson, as stated, Ole Ulevy could step in and get a top 4 spot and fix this. But again, Ulevy is a guy who's been maligned, and again, and I know if you're finished and you're watching this, you're going to say he was great this past season, and that's fine. That's fine, and he may very well have been. And Ulevy and Hughes could be part of a future blue line that is very solid for the Vancouver Canucks. But right now, I don't know. And I think if Ulevy starts out, I think he starts out on the 3rd pairing. Unless he has an amazing training camp and puts up amazing preseason numbers and pressures the Canucks into bumping him into here with Edler, which would bump Stetcher down and bump either Tanev or Del Zotto down, whatever they would end up doing with their pairings from there. Yeah, that's the trick. That's what the Canucks face this coming season. There's a lot of uncertainty. And the channel knows it. 2 votes for first place. 0.3% for second. 0.4% for third. 0.6% for fourth. That means that 1.3% of the vote thinks that the Canucks can finish in the top 4. 1.2% say 5th. 6th, 3.2%, 7th, 12.1%, and 8th, 81%. So even after the Canucks went on a bit of a run at the end of the year to get 73 points, which in the end kind of hosed them at the draft table. Although, I think if the Canucks had switched spots with Arizona and drafted 5th, I have a feeling that Hughes may still have ended up being a Canuck. I know Benning was on the record saying he wouldn't have passed on Zadina if he'd had the shot, but we don't necessarily know for sure. Yes, odds are he would have drafted Zadina, but it's tough to pass on Quinn Hughes, isn't it? All right, I don't have a whole lot to add to this. Oh, my vote. Where do I think they're going to finish? I have them at the bottom. I have the Canucks. I'm with everybody else. I think the Canucks are at the bottom. The only issue I have is this. It's always darkest before the dawn. Somewhere in here I'm looking for the dawn. I know they have Demko in net, but I'm not seeing Demko in net this year. I really hope that with this team, with so much flux and so much chaos going on in the roster, and it's not chaos that there's all these new guys coming in and old guys going out. It's just that who plays where. I don't know that I'd want to see Demko in the lineup. Definitely not to start the season. But there you go. Vancouver Canucks season preview. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. Let me know in the comment section below why this 81% and myself are wrong. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.